Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today on hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelley Keno, and hashtag No Limits is about people whose society has placed limits upon, but who are busting through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet, "We know who we are, but not who we will be." I believe that to be true, and I believe that there is no better example of that than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. For those who don't know, the caterpillar literally dissolves into its cells, reforms into the butterfly, and then has to struggle in order for its wings to be strong enough when it gets out of the cocoon in order for it to be able to fly. I can't imagine that any of that is easy, but it's all necessary. If at any stage in the process we help or give too much help or assistance, the struggles won't have been enough in order for the caterpillar to turn into the butterfly completely and be able to fly. I can't imagine how difficult life is when you have those kinds of um, sort of restrictions placed upon you. And today, I have a gentleman with me, and I'm very excited to share his story. I heard about him through one of the radio stations that I listened to, and almost instantly reached out to him and said, "I would love to have you on hashtag No Limits because you 100% exemplify what it is that I talk about." And so, Kevan, thank you so much for joining me. I'm very humbled that you would accept my invitation to be here.
Oh, thank you, Shelley, for having me.
Absolutely. So I haven't done anything about your story really. There's a couple little businessy things that I need to do. So first of all, if you are joining us live, just like Fran did here, give us a hello and let us know hashtag live. And like LA Jansen did here, hi to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Anyone else who's joining, if you would do the same thing, or if you're watching in the replay, if you would do the same thing. Any questions or comments that you have for myself or Kevan during the show, go ahead and just like Fran and LA did, put those into the chat and I'll pop them onto the screen and Kevan will have a chance to answer them or see your comments. I think that's it. I want to get into your story because I'm just so thrilled to have you here. So, Kevan, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Kevan Chandler. That's the easy part. I am 37 years old. I was born with a neuromuscular disease called spinal muscular atrophy. And so I've lived most of my life in a wheelchair. And I like to say most of my life because there are times when my friends take me out of my chair and put me in a backpack and carry me around the world and even our own backyard. And so that is uh, kind of the shortest, smallest version of that story I have ever told. But in 2016, some friends and I decided that we wanted to go to Europe, just like most, post college guys want to do, and get your friends together and go see the world. But we knew that everything we wanted to do was not going to be wheelchair accessible. And so we decided that did not mean that we couldn't go. It meant that we wouldn't take my wheelchair with us. And so we designed a backpack that could hold me, and these four guys took turns for 3 weeks carrying me in this backpack as we explored Europe and just had an amazing time together as friends without the limits of what the world would consider accessible or not. And so we danced through the streets of Paris. We hopped over fences in the English countryside, and we ended our trip by climbing a mountain, basically island, out off the coast of Ireland, where there's a monastery at the top from the 6th century. And so it was just a really incredible experience of um, an incredible experience of seeing not just what we could do, but also seeing how we could love one another, which I think is actually the greater and deeper um, lesson and joy that we got from the trip beyond just what we got to see and do, but actually how we could care for one another.
Yeah, and I really want to talk about that because that is part of your journey. That when I listened to your story, that was the part that I think touched me the most because I have some friends and some family who need caregivers, but even myself, just asking for that help. And you talked about that, and I would like to talk about that here about asking for help and how you approach that.
Hmm. Yeah. So for me, I'm primarily a writer, and so words mean a lot to me. And while we typically do use the phrase asking for help, what I've found helps me in my mindset is that rather than asking people for help, I'm inviting people into my need. That I I have these needs that I can't help. Yeah, no, it's just part of who I am, and I see um, those needs as a door that I get to open and say, "Come in and be a part of my life." It's kind of the easiest conversation starter is, "Hey, do you mind helping me with this thing?" And so really, it's just my own mindset, and I think also when you're inviting people in, there's an element of hospitality there that not in a I owe them or I need to earn this kind of way, but they are my guest and I want to make sure I'm taking care of them while they're taking care of me. And so, for example, when we were in Europe, it's kind of it's funny talking about that trip to Europe is kind of the big scale, grandiose example, but then we can also talk about the day to day examples. But because that one's so big, it's a bit more, uh, a bit sharper, a bit easier to reference. So when we were in
Right.
Europe, these guys are carrying me on their backs, but then also at the end of each day, there were, we'd get back to our hotel or our apartment or wherever we were staying, and they would still have to help me with food or getting me ready for bed or turning me in the middle of the night. And so they had these responsibilities to take care of me in physical ways for these 3 weeks. But then I realized that because those needs were taken care of, I didn't have to worry about that at all. I didn't have to worry about myself. And so, what I got to do is pay attention to what they needed emotionally and spiritually and mentally. And when you're on someone's shoulders, literally, you get to have some pretty intimate conversations, and you get to say, I think when you're strapped to someone's back and you ask them how they're doing, you're going to get a different answer than other times when you might ask. And so I got to kind of be that ear and that voice for them, and that was my role in the trip. Tom would carry me in the times when we couldn't trade off carriers, and Ben was in charge of getting me up in the morning when we were in a new place and he could navigate a new situation. And Philip was the one that he had really strong arms, so he would lift me and when we weren't using the backpack. And Robbie was the designated driver and you know EMT in case somebody got hurt. And so we all had roles, and I was kind of, for lack of a better term, I was the counselor. I was the
Yeah.
could listen and talk through things.
And I absolutely think it's beautiful inviting someone into your need. That is such a magnificent way to approach it. And I do think that if more of us thought that way, that it would be easier for us whenever we did have a need that we couldn't fulfill on our own, that we reached out and invited someone into our need. So I absolutely think that's beautiful. So these guys, these friends that you said you did this tour with, um, how long had you known them? When had they come into your life?
Oh, they were from a few different seasons of my life, and some of them I'd known for longer than others. But there were three of the guys. So we actually, there were seven of us total on the trip because four guys took care of me, two guys filmed the whole experience because if you're going to do something that crazy, you need proof. And then there was
Sure.
myself. And three of the guys I had known for probably on and off again, maybe 10 years through the music scene in North Carolina where I grew up. And so late high school, going into college, and after college, these guys played in different bands and I played in bands. And so our paths had crossed, and we also, uh, in one season of life, we had all kind of ended up in the same circle of friends that got together every week for a potluck dinner. You know, when you're starving artist coming out of college, you gotta work together. You gotta make ends
Right.
meet. And so yeah, we had just kind of had this. Uh, we were always around each other. We were kind of part of the furniture for each other's lives, and so um, those were those three, and then one of the guys was one of my best friends here in Fort Wayne, which at that point I had lived here maybe 3 or 4 years. So I had known him maybe 4 years, and he would get me up a lot of times in the morning. And after the trip, we actually became roommates, which was really great. And we were roommates for 4 years before I got married. And so, um, yeah, and all of these guys had been involved in my care to different levels. So Ben, the one here in Fort Wayne, like I said, he would get me up a lot of the times in the morning. We had traveled together, but Tom and Luke and Philip, they may have transferred me, carried me up a flight of stairs or something, but had never helped with the restroom or staying overnight. So we did a few test runs before the trip. But then, the other guy that was filming was someone that Luke, who did our filming primarily, he just hired him and brought him along. Um, and then our other carrier, Robbie, the EMT, um, in the months leading up to the trip, we did some fundraiser events, and we had some mutual friends. And so Robbie drove like 2 hours to one of our events and showed up and pulled us into the other room and said, "Hey, here are my qualifications. I want to be of service to you guys. Could I come on
Wow.
the trip?" And so you have guys I've known for 10 years, guys that get me up every other morning of the week, and then a guy that we just met a month before the trip, and so it
Yeah.
was really cool to see that group come together and kind of meld. It wasn't just, oh, these five guys that grew up together. It was, all walks of life, and they worked together under this responsibility of taking care of me. And, I was kind of the cohesive part for them, which was really humbling and honoring to be.
Yeah, and what an incredible group. And so LA says that she's so happy for you that you got to go on the trip and you have amazing friends to do those things with, and that they created this backpack with you. So I would like to talk a little bit more about the backpack. I do have your website, so I want to pull up just a few pictures of it so that people can see
Mm.
kind of what it looks like a little bit, and um, see kind of, I'm guessing this is on the big trip, maybe not.
This was training for the big trip. That was a
Okay.
prototype that we were putting together. So yeah, that's Tom.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there's our whole
That's
group in Paris, obviously.
right. And there we go. Okay. So I'm not sure how many pictures it's going to let me show because I'm not on, like, I think this is the last one. I don't see another arrow.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, well, and I don't know if you want to, but if you go to the causes page, you could see various families using the backpack. So
oh, okay.
if you go to give,
Hmm.
and causes, and
Oh,
then
okay.
find a cause at the top. Or if you go, yeah, find a
There we
cause,
go.
and you could scroll down, and you'll just see a few have their backpacks. See, like the bottom right there is a
Hmm.
dad carrying his, yeah, I think media under there. But yeah, so there's a bunch of pictures in there that people could um, had
Cutie.
pre-backpack, and there you go.
Wow.
But go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, well, going back to talking about the backpack, when I had looked at your media information for today, whoops, hitting the wrong buttons here. It had said that this was based from another backpack. So you guys didn't have to invent the wheel; you just tweaked the wheel, so to speak. Is that correct?
Correct. We just put bigger tires on the wheel.
Okay.
So yeah, we worked with a company called Deuter, and they, yeah, some have pictures. I'm sorry, I don't
That's
know.
okay.
But we worked with a company called Deuter. They're based in Germany, but they have an office in Colorado, and they had a child carrier, but and it was great. It was really a great design, but I exceeded the weight limit, and I
Hmm.
also had other needs. You know, just the way the seat was designed and the way the um, yeah, I needed more head support and different things like that. And so we called them and said, hey, if we um, buy your backpack, we want to break all the rules. Can you help us? Can you help us do that in a way that's okay? You know, we don't want to break the rules and be rebellious. We want to upgrade what you've done, and so they were really supportive. They actually sent us an extra backpack so we could have some spare parts, and um, we just did a lot of test runs. We kind of did a design and then went out for a walk and came back and said, well, this worked and this didn't, and spent a few months doing that until we had what we were happy with to take to Europe. And then after Europe, we reached out to Deuter and said, how would you feel about making a professional version of this in partnership with us? And they were all for it. And so we spent the next year taking our idea and improving that, you know, and tweaking that for their factory version. And we actually, we are now on version 2.0, and we've been distributing those to families all over the world, as you just saw. And we, back in November, gave away our 1,000th backpack. We're currently in 45 countries, which is just unbelievable to me. So, yeah,
Yeah. Did you ever imagine that would be part of your life?
not not at all. I think very often about the fact that these guys and I created this thing, or came up with this thing um, as a means to just go on a goofy trip. You know, we just were having fun, and now we get to see pictures and videos and story after story of families who this is a game changer for them, and a life changing tool that they can use, whether it's a family that just loves to go hiking, and their child, they want to take their child with them, but they have a disability, so now they can, and the family gets to stay together and have adventures together. And then there's families who use it for, you know, I guess you could say more practical things. Of there's a family in Ohio that they live on a farm, and they use it to take their child out every day to feed the chickens, so that he
Oh.
gets to experience the farm life with them. And so, and we get uh, videos of people climbing active volcanoes or walking on frozen ponds, and then we find out that there's a family uh, in another country that uses the backpack so that they can take their child on the bus to the doctor. It's just
Yeah.
amazing to see the breadth of usage for people, and it's just a tool. And we say, um, what are your dreams or what are your goals? Let's see that happen. So it's been great to be a part of that.
Yeah, and again, that's exactly hashtag no limits. Just
Right.
I loved what you said in your introduction about your story of we wanted to go on a trip to Europe and we knew it would be difficult, but that didn't stop us.
Mm, yeah.
And I don't know if that's exactly how you worded it, but that's the sentiment that yes, it's going to be hard, but just because something's hard doesn't mean we don't do it.
Right.
We
Right.
just
Well,
find a way to adapt.
and like you said in your introduction, sometimes because things are hard, we should do them because it's going to grow us and strengthen us and give us those wings that we need, right? Um,
Right.
when you were sharing that, I was thinking of trees as well. If you were to grow a tree in isolation without it experiencing the weather and the wind and the elements, it would grow up with weak roots because it as it grows and it gets blown a little bit, well, the roots get stronger, and then it gets a harder wind and it gets stronger. And if it doesn't have that, it's not going to survive. And so yeah, sometimes you just have to go through the difficult things, and they don't have to be bad.
Right. Hopefully they have, some positive, beautiful outcome to it. But I
Yeah.
imagine that when you're in the midst, and I've gone through some of my own struggles, I imagine those long term, more in depth, every minute of every day struggles, though,
Mm,
makes it a lot more difficult to
sure.
find joy in it
Yeah.
and, to want to keep going necessarily or to think, maybe even to start to feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and so how did you have those feelings, like the whole preparation for the trip to Europe, or
Mm,
not even just that, but your whole life, because this has been with you since you were born, correct?
yeah. Yeah. Correct. Um, yeah, that's a good question, and I would say that's why we need friends and family. We need loved ones who can uh, not just speak into our lives, but exemplify in our lives that um, to keep our head up and in the midst of difficult things, other people can lift our eyes for us and say, "Hey, look around. Remember the joy. Remember the good things that are happening." And so I would say to answer your question about the trip, and then we can talk about life as a whole. But building up to the trip, we ran into a lot of obstacles. We weren't sure we could raise the money for this, and we weren't sure that they were going to allow us onto the island at the end of the trip, which is that's like hiking the El Camino and not being allowed in the church at the end. Like that doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
And, you need the pinnacle, right?
Right.
And we got an email from the company that takes the boats out, and they said, "Oh no, we won't let you do this." And I remember pacing the floor, saying, "Oh no, what are we going to do?" And I remember having, borderline nervous breakdowns about the fundraising or about the media and about
Sure.
preparations. And I was living here in Fort Wayne, and Ben was nearby, and he was part of the trip, so he knew what was going on. And I remember one day he came over to the house, he took my phone from me and muted it, put it in his pocket, and said, "We're going down to the pub to get some fries, and we're not going to look at your phone, and we're just going to have a couple hours of just quiet, and we're going to be normal people, normal friends hanging out, and none of this stress." And and then when I moved in with him, there were times when I felt like, I require too much. I'm too much of a burden. And I remember one day him just looking over at me kind of sideways and being like, I think he actually said, "Stop. Don't talk like that. You're not a burden." And then we moved on. He didn't have to have this
Mhm.
epic speech. He just lived it out through his friendship. And so I think it's important for us to have those people, whether it's one person or a whole community around you. On the trip, we had an accident where I broke my nose, and and
Oh no.
yeah, and I remember just thinking, what are we doing? Why am I here? What are we trying to prove? And I remember two things from that moment. I thought, oh no, this has been a failure because I wanted to prove to the world that I could do this, and apparently I can't. And I realized, no, um, we can do this. There might be hurt, but we can still do it. It's a dangerous thing. That's gonna happen. So that was one thing, and the other thing was, um, I was praying about it. I said, God, I need someone in my corner for this. Like I feel alone, and I'm in a lot of pain, and I felt like the Lord just said, open your eyes and look around you. You've got six guys right, like literally standing around you. You have got so many people in your corner, and so just those kinds of moments of recognizing I'm not alone. um life is actually pretty awesome. and you know, and and there are difficult things, there are hard things, but that's okay. um and so yeah, I think, and just to reiterate that, I mean, my whole life, from childhood on up to today, I think it's always been really important. Uh, and the Lord has blessed me with having people around me, who can speak into my life through words or actions, um, to say it, life is worth the living and there's joy to be found.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so tell me about your childhood and how this actually, I mean, we know that you're in a wheelchair, but exactly how is your body affected by
Mm.
this disease that you have?
So the way that I like to explain the disease is that there's kind of a glitch, between my brain and my spinal cord, so that the message doesn't go properly to my muscles, and so that's why I'm in a wheelchair, because my legs and arms especially are weaker, and they grow weaker over time, and so does the rest of my body. So growing up, I mean, I lived in a very creative household, and I have a brother and a sister. My sister has the same disease, and so and my parents are just really awesome and tenacious and um, creative. And my brother grew up to do theater, and he's a cartoonist and set designer. And my sister is a teacher and a writer, and then I write as well. And my dad's a mechanic, and my mom has done um, like management stuff and written some stuff. And so all that to say, I grew up in a home where my sister and I especially had to wake up every day and say, well, what do I want to do? What can my body do? Like, what do I feel like I can do? And how do we push that a little bit to meet in the middle, And
Mhm.
and so we just found creative ways to live life to the fullest. Our door was always open. We had people coming into the home, friends and family, just to be part of our lives. But also, the door went the other way. We were out in the world. I was playing soccer when I was really little. Once the guys got bigger, it was a little dangerous. So I coached from the sidelines. Um, but then, we were part of a church and part of youth group, and we went to the public school, and we were just part of our community. Kind of grew up in a smaller town in North Carolina, and um, everyone knows your name in the area, and especially our family because we stuck out. It's pretty easy to pick out the Chandlers, but yeah, so we were very much a part of the community and had the community in our home, um, and the community was part of that question of creativity of how do we do what we're wanting to do here in this moment or this situation. um, and I'm just really thankful for that I was always surrounded and never alone in that.
Yeah, and Fran and I, Fran that's been commenting a little bit, she and I have another podcast, and we always say at the end, "You're never alone,"
Mm,
because we never want anybody to feel as if they are alone. Because just like yourself, Fran and I are believers in God, and even if you don't physically have a human with you, you always have God with you.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
Fran had said it. Her last comment here is that God is a strong anchor,
yeah.
and I believe that as well. And I think he does give us what we need
Mm,
in order to get through every situation that we find ourselves in.
yeah.
One of the things that I would like to know, um, is you said when you were littler that you did get to run and play soccer, and as you found yourself having to use the wheelchair more and more, when you would meet people for the first time and they saw you in your wheelchair, did you notice a difference in, like, maybe their expectation of just your intelligence, to be honest?
Mm. Yeah, so I played soccer in my wheelchair. I've never been able to walk. My
Oh,
sis-
okay, sorry.
no, you're good. My sister was able to stand and walk for a little bit, just and I don't know, maybe around 4 or 5. It's when she started needing a wheelchair, but I was born just a little weaker, and so not able to ever walk. But to answer your question, I don't know. I think when I was young, I didn't really notice it. I didn't notice people's uh, responses, positive or negative. I was just a little kid zipping around doing my thing, and I think something that really helped, and I think it helps today as well. But when I was young, it wasn't just me; it was me and my sister. So
Mhm.
people saw us both, and also, our family really normalized the situation, and so our parents. I remember my mom telling me a few years ago that um, they raised us just as normal as possible. We got disciplined, we got, um, spoiled. We went on family trips and we got sick and we had to go to school even if we didn't want to. We did all the normal family dynamics and everything. But uh, what I think that did was, our parents also talked to us at the intelligence level that we were at. And
Mhm.
so did our brother, and so did our friends. And so if we were in a new place or we had new people in our house where there were people that didn't know us and didn't know the context, they saw how our world interacted with us. And they either uh, rose to that or they didn't really uh, stick around, you know.
Sure.
And I've seen that as an adult now. I've seen um, again when we were in Europe. It's a very weird thing to see a guy on someone's back. That's not normal to see. I'm sure you can
Sure. Right?
imagine. And especially, we're going into museums and we're going into we got invited to a 5-star restaurant one night, and
Nice.
we don't fit there because you got a guy on your back. That's weird. But
Right.
what I noticed was there were 7 of us, and we would walk into a room, and for 30 seconds it's weird. But because it
Mm.
wasn't weird for us, we set the tone, and my friends set the tone, and I was involved in that. And the room would adjust; they would shift to that. And we actually, it was funny at that 5-star restaurant. Uh, Men in tuxedos at the next table over got up to help us, rearrange things, and when you would think they would shy away. But we had
Right.
this new tone, and they rose to that. Um, and then, now being married for 3.5 years now, my wife and I, when we go somewhere, um, she will, when it's appropriate, like she will defer to me in a conversation, or whereas most people who don't know us may talk to her because I'm in a wheelchair and they don't know
Right.
whether I can respond, but they see her interacting with me, and so they realize pretty quickly, oh, he he can communicate, and he's at a level that can be part of this. And so anyway, yeah, I think it has to do with somebody said, uh, family makes or breaks you, and I think uh, the people around you, whether it's family or friends, um, I think that is very much the case. So,
Yeah, and all of that is some of the reason why I try to continue to do hashtag no limits, because I do think it's a lot about exposure.
mm,
And the more
yeah,
we are exposed to differences, the more normal the differences become, and we
mhm,
don't make a deal out of those differences, and we do
mhm,
just accept people for being people.
yeah,
And actually, Fran says, "I'm a person too."
mhm,
And, that's so important, and as a special education teacher, I really didn't want to know what the eligibility for Hi, Violet. Thanks for joining. I really didn't wanna know what the eligibility of my students was, because I
mhm,
wanted to see them as whoever they were,
yeah,
not as whatever their eligibility was.
mm,
And I I so often am frustrated with people because they will use that label language first,
mm,
autistic whoever, or, wheelchair person, whatever. And every one of us is a person first. And so
mm,
trying to recognize and honor the person, and
mm,
just, have normalcy, whatever normal really. I keep doing that because I've always done that, like, what is normal?
yeah,
Everybody's normal is different, and
yeah,
that's okay. Um, and so I appreciate that perspective that you have about going into places and having those interactions with people, that as long as you set the tone, yeah,
mhm,
it's awkward for a little bit, but then that awkwardness goes away.
yeah.
And I think that is so, so important. Um, and so you said that you and your sister are both diagnosed with this, but that it's a rare disease. So I'm assuming, based on the tiny bit of medical knowledge that I have, that it runs in families then, or it's genetic, maybe I should say it that way. Is that
Um,
correct?
yeah, yes, but like we don't know of anywhere else that it's in our family or
Mhm.
anything. So, and actually, when I was diagnosed, we didn't really know of any other families that had more than one child with the diagnosis. I Since then, as an adult, I know of one other family, maybe two, um, that have more than one child with the diagnosis. But it's funny because I've realized also that I wonder how much of that is because of the rarity of it, and how much of it is because of the message that, well, now you have a child with this diagnosis, you don't need to have more children, and
Oh,
so
sure.
people stop having kids, and
Right.
so
That's good.
yeah, I
Good
don't
point.
know if it would show up more or not, but um, yeah. So my sister and I always felt like we were kind of a special pair that we went together. So
And you said you grew up in North Carolina, but you live in
Mhm.
Indiana now. Do your parents still live in North Carolina?
They did until a couple of years ago. They moved to Memphis, Tennessee. My brother
Okay.
and his wife live out there, and so that's where all the grandkids are. So they,
Oh, okay.
my dad retired, and they decided it was time to go. So yeah.
And so how did they handle you who needed a lot of, you invited them often into your need.
Mhm.
How did they feel about you moving so many states away at first? Was that difficult for them?
Hmm. It was a step by step process, not an overnight transition. Because in college, well, first off, my sister lived on campus in college, about an hour from home, and so it was close enough where she could get home, or mom or dad could go there, um, but it was also far enough away that she could try it out, try living
Mhm.
on her own, and then she actually moved to Indiana first to work with a refugee group that had um, kind of settled here, and she
Hmm,
has a degree in teaching ESL, and so she moved
okay.
up here to do that for a few years. And in the meantime, I went to college about half an hour away from home. And the first couple of years, I lived at home, but I would go to school each day, and I would stay with my friends on the weekends. And I played, as I mentioned earlier, I played in a band, and so we would, go out of town, on a short tour for a couple days here and there, and so I was getting my sea legs, if you will. I was getting used to being away from home, and about halfway through college, I moved in with a friend of mine close to the school, and then I ended up living on campus. And then after college, I stayed in that town. I rented a house with a buddy of mine, and we had guys that would come and go and take care of me throughout the day and night. But again, I was close enough that I could see my parents, and if I needed something, if I got sick, or the guys taking care of me were traveling, or um, just busy with something else, I had a backup. I had a safety net. And in the meantime, I started traveling a lot, doing a lot of road trips all over the country, and did a summer internship in Arkansas, where a couple friends went with me and stayed with me, and after all of that, and living, sharing a house with a buddy of mine, um, not far from my parents, then eventually I decided to move to Indiana, which my sister was still here, and so and she had kind of tested that out, and we had seen that it works, and so I think it was hard for my parents, but not impossible, because they had seen baby steps toward
Right.
that. Yeah. And it got
Yeah.
to the point where a lot of people have asked, well, how did your parents respond to you going to Europe? Um, and it's funny because when I got on a plane to go to France, my parents were on a road trip up to New England because they'd always wanted to do that. Like they were doing their own thing, and my sister
Right.
was doing a summer uh, serving some refugees up in Maine. And it's like we
Right.
we were all doing our own thing. Nobody was sitting at home wringing their hands, wondering if this was going to work. We all had stuff to do. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like I said, that normal, that's your normal. It was just it sort of almost probably seemed like the next step in the progression of everything else that you had done up to that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've come to realize um, that, because when I moved to Fort Wayne in Indiana here, I lived kind of close to downtown, and so I could walk, quote unquote, to downtown on my own, and that's what I did every day to work from downtown. And what I realized was the same part of me that said every day, I'm going to leave my house and cut through this neighborhood and get to a coffee shop downtown. That the same part of me that said that I could do that was the same part of me that took me overseas. If
Mm,
you can go down the street to a coffee shop, you can fly to Europe or Australia or China or wherever you need to go. Um, it may be longer, it may be more expensive, it may be more dangerous, but it's the same part of you. And I think kind of the opposite end of that is if you're not willing to go out your front door to cross the street, are you going to be willing to cross an ocean? And
right.
so just stretching those muscles, um, developing, like I said, those sea legs with going down the street and then going a little further and a little further is kind of what it's all about. And I think that can be applied to people with disabilities or able bodied, either way. We all
Right.
have that thing in us that says you can do this and you can't do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't remember who the quote should be attributed to, but there is somebody who says, if you believe you can, you've accomplished half of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Or if you believe you can't, you're right. That either way,
Yeah, a long way
whatever
to
your
go.
mindset is.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So there's just a couple of questions I want to ask you, and this time has gone by very quickly. But so you had mentioned that you went to school about a half an hour away, and for the first couple of years you lived at home. So do you drive?
I actually don't. I know that there is technology that could allow me to,
Mhm.
but kind of going back to always having people around. I don't know if I had a way to drive if I would really want to, because I'm always with people and I'm happy to let someone else drive. I will say, since being married, I've considered it more and have considered looking into it. I have a friend who's also in a wheelchair, and she just got um, outfitted, I guess you would say, to be able to drive her
Mhm.
van with, and so the idea has recently returned, and kind of
Okay.
entertaining that. My wife and I love to do a lot of road trips, and I would really love to serve her by saying, I can drive for a few hours and you can rest. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. And so if you don't mind kind of running us through very quickly, what a typical day is like for you and how much you invite people into your need during your day.
Hmm. Yeah. So a typical day right now is 3 inches of snow and sleet on the ground. So there,
Oh,
not a
yep.
whole lot going on, but even that. So most days of the week, I have a different friend, a different guy that's in my community will come over in the morning and get me up, and so what that looks like. None of them are hired or trained professionally. They're all just dudes. They're all just friends, whether it's from church or from the coffee shop or, um, at some point, a friend of a friend introduced us and we hit it off. But these are all just guys that I've developed relationship with, and they love me and I love them, and we see this as an opportunity um, to get quality time together each week, or some of them it's every other week. But yeah, so uh, in the morning, my wife gets up a little bit before they arrive and gets ready for the day, and then whoever it is that day will show up. The guy today, I texted him last night and said, uh, if it's too icy out, if the roads aren't good, don't worry about coming. Katie can get me up; it's no big deal. So he wrote at 7:30 this morning and said, "I'm on my way. I'll be there in a little bit." And he made it work, because he wanted to be here. And
Right.
so yeah, a guy will come and um, get me ready for the day, and that's usually hour to 2 hour process, depending on what else involved for the day. If I need a shower, or just moving slow. Some of us takes a little longer to get up, and
Hmm.
but that's a sweet time of conversation and laughter and serious conversation and really goofy conversation, and we just have a really good time connecting. And sometimes they stick around for breakfast, sometimes they have to get to work, or they have a meeting they have to run to, or um, whatever the case may be. and and after they leave, Katie and I will have breakfast, and then I'll get started with the day, and have I'm in my office here, which is at our house, so that days like today I can stay home. I don't have to go out anywhere.
Right.
And yeah, Katie works from home as well, and so we can kind of make things work here on our own if we need to. But also, a couple weeks ago, she was really sick and in bed, and so we had guys coming and going all day for a few days to help take care of me. And our neighbor will pull in our trash, or a guy will come over to shovel, or shovel the driveway, or rake the yard. And um, we have a friend that comes over and mows the lawn. And I've really loved uh, in our marriage getting to see all these guys come around to do the things that I want to do, but I can't. And
Hmm.
um, and they provide it for us. Our washing machine wasn't working right yesterday, so the guy that got me up said, "Well, let's look at it together." And he and I got to kind of take it apart and work on it and stuff. And so they're kind of uh, they are my hands and feet sometimes, to different ways to take care of my wife and love her. And um, when they get me up in the morning, they make the bed. It may not be the way that we would want it made, but they make it.
Right.
Um, but then we travel a lot, and oftentimes we'll invite guys to come with us when we travel, so that Katie doesn't have to do all the caregiving. And yet that also gives them a chance to get away, and get to have road trips with our friends. And yeah, so it's just kind of a looking at each day and saying, what do we need to do, and um, who do we need to invite in to do that. And I love the community that we have here, because we've been doing it so long that we don't always have to do the asking or the inviting.
Mhm.
They'll step in. And
Right.
I actually, my friend Ben that went on the trip to Europe with me, um, I think it was 2 summers ago, he went down to Florida to help open a new Chick-fil-A. That was where he was working at the time. And he got to go down for a couple months. And when he got back, I got a text from him, and he said, "Hey, can I get back on the schedule to get you up in the morning?" I didn't have to
Hmm.
bring that up or ask. And
Yeah.
so I just love
Awesome.
that it's kind of this. Um, this atmosphere that's been fostered, and I'm thankful to be right smack dab in the middle of it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a very beautiful um, symbiotic relationship. Uh,
Mm,
and I applaud everyone in your community and in your circle that
mm,
is doing that, and to have such great experiences. I mean, there are so many people who probably would love to go to Europe, but
mm,
for various reasons, they've not made it. And yet, here you are saying, yeah, it's going to be tough, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to figure it
mm,
out. My friends and I are going to figure it out. And to find the backpack and to, I mean, we didn't even really get into like how frightening was it for you to leave that wheelchair behind and
yeah,
to just know for the next 3 weeks you were not going to have that fallback? I hate to use
right.
that word, but, and I can only imagine, what that must have been like for you,
Hmm.
and the amount of trust that you
Yeah.
share with all of these people.
Mm.
I mean, there's so many more layers and so much more depth to your story. Does that sort of stuff come out into the book, We Carry Kevan?
It does. It does. And
Okay.
I will just say real quick that I think when we invite people into our need, um, the trust that we are offering, um, and the dignity that we're giving someone by entrusting ourselves to them is probably the biggest gift that we can give. That's the
Mm,
greatest superpower that we have. So,
that's
but yes,
beautiful.
it comes through the
Absolutely.
book, and it will come through future books as well that I'm currently working on.
Awesome. So where can someone find the documentary and the book? I'm guessing the book they can get through your website or Amazon?
Yeah, so the book you can get through our website, wecarrykevan.org. And the documentary is currently not available to the public, but we do
Okay.
share at events that we do, which
Okay.
those are listed on the website. And you can sign up for our newsletter on the website so you can find out the latest of where we're going to be and what we're doing.
Fabulous. And I do just want to mention that Kevan is spelled Kevan. So We Carry is your typical spelling, and then Kevan, Kevan.org. Go check it out, get the book, support him, put some money down for some of those other families to get a WCK backpack, because it's just an incredible opportunity that continues to express hashtag no limits and
Hmm.
open so many doors. So Kevan, thank you again for being my guest today. It really was humbling to have you here, knowing that you have accomplished what you've accomplished, and you've been on much bigger programs than mine and with much wider audiences. And so I deeply appreciate your time today. Thank you, Fran in LA, for your comments today, and anyone else who was watching but didn't comment. Thank you for being here. Please share this episode. Share it with someone that you know that it would touch their heart as much as it's touched yours and mine today. Make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And I will see you all next time.